I thought about putting ruffles on my oven mitt, but it didn't seem the safest, so obviously the most logical thing to do was add scallops. And if you're watching this, that means my pattern is available. So you'll start out by cutting the fabric for the oven mitt, and you'll need 2 pieces for your outer fabric and 2 pieces for your inner fabric. Do remember that these should be the mirror image of each other. Next, you'll use the pattern piece for the scallops to cut out 1 strip for the outer fabric and 1 for the inner fabric. And you can also use those as a guide to cut out your batting as well. When I make oven mitts, I do layer both cotton batting and Insole Bright. After doing it incorrectly here, I looked it up. The correct order is your outer fabric, Insole Bright, and then your cotton batting. Go ahead and layer those up and quilt as desired. Then you'll want to cut off all the excess fabric from the sides. I am calling this the loop. To make this, you'll fold the long edges inwards before folding it over itself again, and then you'll just sew down the edges of both sides. Okay, now take your quilted oven mitts and place them right sides together. Fold your loop in half and sandwich it towards the bottom of your oven mitts, and then clip that as well as the rest of the oven mitt to help stabilize it. And then you'll just sew all the way around the edges of the oven mitt. And when you're done, you can flip it right side out and work on the inner fabric. For the inner lining, it's going to be just about the same. The only difference is you are going to leave a gap in the side so that you can flip everything right side out later on. I choose to leave my gap right here. And then moving on to the scallops, using the pattern piece, cut out your fabric and your batting and then quilt it. And a neat little hack that I've been doing is cutting off the bottom part of the seam allowance on the paper pattern and then using that as a guide to accurately sew my scallops. So you'll place the inner lining on top of the quilted outer fabric and then the paper pattern directly over that, and use clips to help keep them all together. And then you will begin sewing right underneath the paper pattern scallop. Note that we're only doing the curved parts of the scallops right now because as of right now, we're not touching the edges of the sides. So next I will trim off a little bit of that fabric underneath the sewn line, and then I'll also clip right here just so that the fabric doesn't tug when we turn it right side out, but make sure you don't cut into your sewing. Then you can go ahead and just flip the scallop part out. Take the edges of the sides and fold them in towards each other. You want all of the right sides to be facing each other. And it might seem a little awkward, but you're going to sew a line down both the inner fabric and the outer fabric at the same time. This is what that should look like. And you can fully flip it so that they're on top of each other and everything is right side out. And now you have your scallops with finished seams. Now wrap the scallops around the bottom of the oven mitt, right sides together. And you'll want to line up the raw edges of the scallops and the oven mitt with one another. Also try to line up the seam of the scallops with one of the sides of the oven mitt, and then you'll sew them together. Now you can place the right side out oven mitt into the inside out inner lining, and once again you're going to line up the raw edges and sew them together. This can be a little tricky to maneuver if the opening of the oven mitt does not fit around your sewing machine's arm, but I did find that it was easier to sew the layer underneath in the circle versus the one on top, if that makes sense. Once you're done, use the gap that you left in your inner lining to pull the oven mitt out of it, and if everything looks all right to you, then you can go ahead and close that hole up, shove the inner lining inside the oven mitt, and last but not least, you'll kind of do a top stitch, which is basically a little bit above where the scallop and the oven mitt meets. And that's it. This was so exciting to share with you guys. If you decide to make it, please tag me. I'd love to see